Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today we have our first look at the Air Assault game mode that will come out with the Apocalypse DLC for Battlefield 1. You could call this the Air Superiority spiritual successor. It's basically Air Superiority but for Battlefield 1 and done with a lot of other cool new features. This is the best version of Air Superiority that I've seen in a Battlefield game so far, and it's got a lot of stuff going for it. Currently, there's two maps available for it. London Calling, which you're seeing right now. This is basically taken out of the single-player campaign. And then there's also Razor's Edge, which is a snowy peaked map that you'll see in a second. That is also taken out of the single-player campaign. Both maps look great. There's volumetric clouds in them, which is really cool, so you can use them for cover and evading people on your tail. And I think you can also use them to potentially break spots. Now, Air Assault isn't just one type of game mode. It actually cycles through various different game modes. On Razor's Edge, it is purely dogfighting with fighters. There's no attack planes or bombers, just fighters flying around and blowing each other out of the sky. It's basically TDM, but with fighter planes. However, on London Calling, you can spawn in with both fighters, attack planes, and even the bigger bombers, plus some of the smaller airships, and then the big Behemoth class airships as well. Currently on CTE, they're testing out two game modes on London Calling. One is called Scourge, which is a 2-round mode where one team starts off with the Behemoth. You have to defend that Behemoth, and whichever team makes it to their point cap faster wins the round. If the attacking team destroys the Behemoth, I think it's an instant win. And if the defending team basically gets enough fighter kills, then they win that round. And then it swaps sides. The other game mode is called Raiders. And in Raiders, it features Behemoth versus Behemoth combat, so the giant airships can fight each other. There's also smaller airships that can partake in the battle as well, and full-on fighters, attack planes, bombers, everything. It's all-out warfare, and the first team to hit their point cap wins. Destroying a Behemoth is worth 1,000 points, so basically if you do destroy the enemy team's Behemoth in this game mode, it's an instantaneous win. So there's different ways to win the round. You can either do it by shooting down enough enemy players or taking out the Behemoth. Now, some of the vehicles, including the Behemoths, have been modified. For example, instead of having the air versus ground weapons on the Behemoth, those have now been turned into anti-aircraft cannons. So a bunch of weaponry has been modified to make it more suited for air versus air combat. A lot of the heavy bombers have actually had some of their weaponry changed for this game mode as well. Since the bombers are generally intended for air versus ground destruction, these ones are being modified a bit more so that they can be better in air-to-air combat. That being said, sitting on a gunner seat for a bomber in these game modes isn't particularly fun. They tend to go down pretty darn fast. I didn't really enjoy my time gunning too much, but it is something that you can do, especially if you're not a particularly good pilot. You can still be useful. Now, unfortunately, for those of you who don't really fly or know how to fly very well in Battlefield 1, there isn't an infantry component in this game mode at all. Even if you spawn on the airships in London Calling and you decide you're going to get out on top of the Zeppelin and run around and shoot at airplanes, you can't really do that. You can still gun on the airships if you don't want to fly, and that's totally a viable option. You can actually rack up quite a few kills doing that, but there is no infantry component at all. Now, how does it play out? I don't consider myself to be necessarily an ace pilot, but I can hold my own in Battlefield 1, definitely in a more casual environment, and I had a lot of fun playing this mode. It's cool. It changes Battlefield 1 up a lot. I don't think the game mode is quite as involved or interesting as, say, Starfighter Assault and Star Wars Battlefront 2, but it is a nice game mode for a BF1 DLC. The objective play isn't quite as interesting, but the piloting mechanics and flight mechanics are certainly a bit more involved. The graphics are really beautiful, and seeing all these different planes rendered in the sky at the same time is awesome. It's truly a sight to behold, and I think this is the best iteration of Air Assault or Air Superiority that's ever been done in a Battlefield game, and World War I is a perfect setting for it. It's really cool when you just jump straight into the middle of these intense dogfights and you're watching planes blow up left and right, especially on the London Calling map when you have airships and other things exploding or bigger bombers exploding mid-air. You just get these fantastic scenes. Now clearly you can see that the texturing is not done on this map yet. We are in CTE, which means that this is the test phase of Air Assault. The devs are looking for feedback, and in that respect I do have some suggestions for the game mode. The first of that being team balance. There's not a lot of cover in this game mode, and once one team secures momentum or has a significantly higher skill pool, it can be very difficult for the enemy team to get in there and secure any kills or have any fun. I think team balance is important regardless of what game mode you're playing in Battlefield 1, but in terms of enjoyment or being able to do anything, it's going to be very important to try and make sure that the skill pool on one team doesn't far outweigh the other team. Otherwise, the losing team is going to get massacred to a point where most players just won't even be able to secure a single kill. Basically, team balance is obviously very important regardless what game mode you're playing in Battlefield 1, but in Air Assault I feel like the effects of an improperly balanced team are multiplied tenfold, and it really does become unenjoyable. Another critique is that the point scoring and the game mode goes extremely fast. So some of these rounds lasted between 4 and 5 minutes. They went really quickly, and it doesn't really give you a chance to get into a battle or try and modify your strategy or change your tactics or anything like that, because the game is over before you even realize it. So definitely changing the point scoring so that these can feel more like prolonged battles in which you have opportunities to modify strategies and let the battle evolve would definitely help the overall feeling of each round. The smaller player-controlled airships in the Raiders game mode, although they look really cool, are insanely ineffective. I spawned in them a few times only to be blown up in a matter of seconds without much of an opportunity to engage anyone. In addition to that, piloting them is pretty darn boring since you don't really have any weapons to actually engage the other aircraft. The point scoring is a bit all over the place, and there's a huge emphasis on actually securing the kill rather than doing the majority of the damage to an enemy plane. So you'll end up getting a lot of situations in which there's 2 or 3 enemy planes chasing down one guy just to try and secure the kill rather than do the damage. So if I get in there, do 90% damage on a plane, and somebody else comes in and secures that kill, they get way more points than me. This is a bit different than infantry combat, where a lot of the points come from the damage dealt. You still get damage dealt points in air-to-air combat, but the vehicle destruction points and the enemy player killed points are worth quite a few, so the final kill really is what accounts for the majority of the points, and I feel like that favors chance a little bit more than sustained accuracy or sustained damage output. So DICE could definitely look at some of the point distribution in this game and modify it a little bit. Balancing the aircraft is going to be a bit tricky because what do? Do you balance the aircrafts for purely air versus air combat, or do you balance them for all variations of Battlefield 1 piloting, which can be air versus ground and air versus air combat? It's a tricky situation. I think I've already seen a bunch of arguments pop up about the power of some of the attack planes and some of the fighters over the other ones, like the dogfighter's ability to disable incredibly easily could be seen as a huge advantage in this. So there's definitely some high-level balance discussion to be had. Overall, though, I gotta say that I'm really enjoying this. I'm happy that DICE added this mode to a DLC. Clearly, it's not going to appeal to everyone. Piloting in Battlefield 1 is, generally speaking, more difficult than a super arcadey game. It's still very arcadey in general, but it does require a slightly higher level of skill than you might expect from, say, Star Wars Battlefront 2 Starfighter Assault. In that game mode, you can basically point in the direction that you want to go. In this one, you actually have to roll your plane and pull up and adjust your throttle management a little bit. It's not particularly difficult, but it is a higher level of skill than most of these super arcadey flight modes. It's also possible that the aces are going to completely dominate this game mode and make it somewhat unenjoyable for novice pilots to get into it. That can be the case definitely in standard Battlefield 1 games right now. If aces are dominating a server, it can be really difficult for a mediocre pilot to get in there and have any fun because they're going to get shot down every time. Will that happen in this game mode? It's hard to say yet, but I have a feeling the aces are really going to be ruling the skies here. So you want to get in and probably play this as soon as it launches officially, comes out of the DLC, as that will be the best time to play and the most noobs will be playing. And then I imagine like a couple weeks into it, it's just going to be aces only. And if you try and get into it as a novice, it could be very, very difficult. That's just my predictions based on gaming trends and stuff that I've seen over the years. So we'll have to wait and see if that actually happens. Ultimately though, I'm excited. I like the game mode and I can't wait to see it in the final DLC release. As always guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.